Welcome, dear listener, to the Secrets for a Happy Life podcast, born from my desire to share the knowledge I've acquired on leading a better life, interwoven with diverse experiences from my travels, years of studying psychology, and life lessons. I'm Petra Kmetec-Bitens, your guide on this journey on rediscovering joy, productivity, and the essence of living a fulfilled life. Welcome to Mindful Mondays, where every Monday, me and Irina, we talk about different psychological themes. And today we're gonna talk about anger, because last week we started talking a little bit about it and we realized that many people don't know much about it, how to deal with it, what is it. So if you have any questions, please ask. Leave a comment below and we'll be happy to answer you and to chat with you. Good morning, good day, good evening.
How are you?
I'm well. I wanted to say I'm good like always, but I have a really big migraine. I'm trying to get off caffeine. So I stopped drinking coffee and now I'm paying it tax. So yeah, I hope in next 2 days it's gonna be okay.
I'm taking your share. Usually I do just one in the morning. Now I'm doing second one, so that's for you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being so transparent and sharing it with us, and I hope you do feel better soon.
Yeah, I think today we're having a really good topic. So anger is the one that usually brings up a lot of emotions. So maybe I will get a little share of this and I will feel more energized afterwards. So
yeah, I hope so.
Yes.
Okay, so do you mind actually if I start by sharing a definition that I came across? I was looking up in Brené Brown's book on emotions, and I really loved the way she defines anger. So I will just read it out and maybe we can take it from there. So she says, when we feel anger, we believe that someone or something else is to blame for an unfair or unjust situation, and that something can be done to resolve the problem. I love the last bit, and I think that really pinpoints that anger is an action emotion. There is usually something that can be done, or we perceive that we can do something, because if we feel like it's all unfair but we can't do anything, then other emotions kick in.
I like to think on anger like not like I'm angry or somebody did something to me that I feel this, but it's just an emotion. Like I feel the anger, it's here, and maybe if I don't start to think about it, why am I angry, what's happening, it might go away. But if there is some deep core values that we have that are threatened, or that are the line is crossed, then I think we all feel anger or angry. But yeah, I think it's healthy when we stop thinking that somebody else is causing it.
Yeah, I don't think and I agree with you completely, and I don't think she means it in a way that puts the blame on others, but it's more often the perception is when the anger comes up, even, when someone is crossing the boundaries, it's what the other person has done, and the healthier reaction is say, no, this is not okay, and so the anger comes up to help us act it out in a way. But usually there is some external impulse to trigger that, I guess.
Yeah, but like you said, it's our perception. So if, let's say, if somebody would be really talking badly about you and you would be listening to them, you would be angry. But if there would be some alien talking to you and you wouldn't even understand them, what they're saying, you would be like, okay, it's some gibberish. I don't get you. And you would put a smile on your face, wave to them and walk away. So I think also it's how we perceive others and their actions, and anger is also learned behavior also. So maybe we could talk a little bit about this too. So in TA, intersectional analysis, we have we use a lot of racket emotions. So racket emotion is feelings, are habitual feelings that we learn through our childhood, and are manipulative emotions. So behavior. Let's say if nobody was listening to me if I said to my mom, I'm hungry or I don't like this. But if I start screaming and shouting and putting tantrums, then she will listen. And that's why I learned that my anger will get me what I want. But usually when people are adults, they don't even recognize this, because this is just their coping mechanism. Also with, if I am hurt, it's better that I show anger or feel anger than rather that I feel vulnerable or sad, or I don't know. So it's really complex. It's really complex, and there is, like we always say, it's no cure for everything. And we have also different kind of anger. So I would like to hear your take on this also. I'm thinking about, I know you are learning a lot from Gabor Mate and his internalized anger and what this can bring to our health. And I think if we don't express anger in a healthy way, being assertive or just telling that this is no, and just set boundaries like in a normal healthy way, not with rage or on the upper scale of expressing anger, but in a normal way, we internalize this anger and then we are really harsh to ourselves. And I think this leads to many other complications, and I would like to hear your part of take on this.
Thank you for that. And before I answer your question, I'll just want to take a step back and refer to something you mentioned earlier about the fact that anger is almost easier to express, and correct me if I'm paraphrasing it wrong, than hurt, vulnerability, pain, etc. And I think around that there is this debate going on also in the community of all the sort of psychiatry, etc., around whether anger is primary or secondary emotion. And I was surprised to find out that apparently 91% of the researchers, more or less, believes that it is primary. Because I've always related more to the secondary camp, and I think the people that I've been learning from, they are kind of more in that camp as well. And exactly the point being that there is usually hurt, pain, or something else behind that anger. And the reason it shows up more often as anger, and we may not even be aware sometimes that there is something behind it, or we don't look deeper, is, for one, we may not have the vocabulary to name what is going on. And second, it may be just too damn painful to feel the pain, the hurt, the whatever is underneath. So I think that's something I wanted to mention, and maybe you can tell me where you sit on that.
Can I just jump in, because to the point that you were pointing out that it's easier to express anger. For me, I had to learn to express anger, because for me that was forbidden emotion. And I think for many women in my age, anger was forbidden emotion. So if I felt anger, I didn't even realize it, because my racket emotion, my learned behavior was sadness. So I was okay to express sadness. I was okay to express that something like vulnerability, but not anger. So I really had to give myself permission to express anger, to feel anger, to recognize anger.
Thank you for that. That's a brilliant point. And I think that's also a lot to do, as you said, with gender identification in this society. Because for me, I got in touch with my anger probably a couple of years ago, doing all the works that I do. I thought, no, I'm not an angry person. I don't have that. And we often think about it in labels like angry person, that person, this person. I'm like, I don't get that. I don't get angry. And then I was like, hang on a second. And then I realized, yes, I do have it. It was just never really accepted, or it was never welcome when it was coming up. And then I had this really clear memory popping up in my head when I was 4 or 5 years old once. And I was so terrified, I was so frustrated, and I got really angry with my mother, who was in that situation with me. And I guess I felt like she did not protect me, and all that anger started coming out. And the way she responded to that, through no fault of her own, obviously, but still, made it so clear to me that there is no room for my anger in that space. So when I'm angry, she wanted nothing to do with me. The only choice I had as a 4-year-old is to disconnect from the anger, push it down, and go back to being sad, just like you said.
Mm.
So yeah, that's a good correction. But I think, yeah, men are more allowed to, almost like the opposite, right? It's almost okay for them to get angry, but less so if you like to be vulnerable and go and cry and the things that are more acceptable for women.
Eat pancakes or tons of ice cream. No, I think it's gender related and also cultural related, because if you think about, like, we European women, we are more like easygoing, but if you have to deal with Latinas, they are more like temperament, and really if they are angry, you know they are angry, you know. So, and nothing wrong with that, you know. It's okay, but we are differently raised up, and
yeah, it's healthy, as you said. And to your earlier questions that I kind of sidetracked away from, is it is really healthy. As any emotions, there is space for it and there is room for it, and it's communication. So we shouldn't be ashamed of it or embarrassed to say, no, this is bad. And almost anger is often demonized, like this is bad. And to some extent it comes out of fear in some people that their anger, if allowed up on the surface, will get out of hand, and they're worried what might happen. And but pushing it down year after year after year creates all sorts of illnesses in the body, because the body needs to express it somehow. It needs to show you that it's not really healthy what you're doing. And but you know, now coming back to the question you asked about Gabor, for example, and he talks about he worked with a lot of hardcore drug addicts, and he's been to the prisons where they keep those, you know, murderers and people who've done horrible things. And what he discovered really is all of them have been severely abused as children. And when he worked with those prisoners, after a while, a lot of them, he actually found out that they were very sensitive people underneath that. And all the pain that they've been carrying throughout their lives, all the abuse they've been through, the only way they could cope with it was through rage and through whatever things they were doing. They were just completely overwhelmed by all the other emotions, and they had absolutely no support system around them.
Yeah. If I go back to what you said a little bit earlier, we're just.
But we're keeping, we're keeping the thread.
Yeah, I like this conversation because we are just throwing balls to each other and we catch them and throw them back. So you said. No, I went too much into the tennis court, so. Yeah, that people are afraid to express anger because they think that it will go out of hand. That was really helpful for me when I was studying psychology, and I asked this question because I had this, my early memory was that I was yelling at my mother because I was so angry. She did really something minor, but I felt such a rage. And I saw the way my words hurt her, and then I shut down my anger because I said I don't want that my anger is hurting other people. So I completely shut down my anger when I was little, and also it wasn't allowed. Then I asked this question later on, and they draw me a line. So they said, okay, this in the middle is normal expressed anger. on the lower scale is internalized anger, and on the upper scale is rage. And it's okay to express it normally. You don't have to go into the rage, because also rage is, you still have the control when you are raging. You still have the control, but you just let it go. And I learned also that time, I realized that if I don't express anger, I express it to myself. So if I don't put it out, I put it in. And that was a shock for me, because I never thought about it that way. And that is self-criticism, or doing self-harm. We have a lot of young kids who are just cutting themselves now because of that. Or you get psychosomatic symptoms because you don't express your anger in a healthy way, or you just withdraw and you isolate yourself. And I think this self-criticism, the perfectionist part of ourselves, is this anger that we put towards ourselves. And it's good to know that, not just, oh, I'm a perfectionist. What is this anger that is making you perfectionist? You know, and also asking those questions. What do you gain by doing that? Because we always have some secondary gain from that we don't even realize. Yeah. So how to express anger then? In a normal scale, like being assertive, not hurting somebody else more than it's necessary, just to protect ourselves with our words. I was also thinking a lot about this lately, especially after those opening ceremony of on Olympics. I was just disappointed, angry, all the emotions in scale. And I was thinking, okay, how can I express my anger? Because if I start to talk about it online, it doesn't help. If I'm angry behind four walls, it doesn't help. So what to do? You know, what to do? You have any question, any answer, idea?
Have you done anything, or is it still with you?
I took a deep breath. I thought a lot about it. What can I do? Because I'm not the person who would go out for some protests or something like that. And I think these protests, they don't work anyway. So no, I haven't done anything. I just slept over it, and it's better now.
So what I would suggest in this situation, or in anything really, taking the breath is a good one, you know, rather than just, because very often anger is such a powerful emotion. When it comes in, we don't take a moment to reflect, and it just goes out like a volcano, right? And that's usually not really constructive. So taking a breath, recognizing anger is present, and don't identify with it, right? It's not like I'm angry, but there is anger in me, because there are also other parts, and there is the self that is observing the anger, if you like, right? There is a part that recognizes that it's there. And then I would just get really curious. What is it that got you angry? Because there is something that, you know, perhaps some value of yours that got really...
Definitely. Yeah, that was it.
That got really touched there in a uncomfortable way. So I would get curious, I would explore. And I think just understanding yourself is really helpful. And then whether, you know, there is anything you can do in this particular circumstances to correct them to be more aligned with your values, was probably nothing, you know, that you can do in this case. But yeah, I think the only thing within our control is really getting curious and understanding why we have this emotion coming up for us. It is there as a messenger, so it signals to you, this is your value, it's an important one for you, and it's been really threatened in this situation.
Yeah, because there are many things like this now going out around the world, and when is the time to really start doing something, you know, not only get curious about ourselves, but really to do actions in the real world. And I think it's a fine line. Yeah.
Well, it is, and then I guess you need about that, you can go a bit more practical and see if one believes in the power of protest, you go and protest.
I don't.
If you believe in exactly, but if you know, maybe you join some organization that is lobbying it with the relevant authorities, governments, etc. I mean, you look for the channels to, depending on situation, what it is about. You can also get quite active, not necessarily just curious, but I think curiosity is the first step, because actually it was an interesting read about also a lot of social activists are really wounded, angry people with a lot of suppressed anger. Yeah. And they go into the whole activism without really understanding what's fueling them. And that's why they can't be very effective. But once they actually understand what's behind it and why it's there, then they can be more effective in what they're trying to achieve in the world.
Yeah, because anger also clouds up our judgment. We don't think clearly when we are angry. So I saw many talks with wanted to be like discussions with angry people, and you cannot get anywhere with them. They just don't think clearly. So calm down firstly with breathing exercises, with maybe just sleep over something, and yeah, get curious, like you said. What is it? Why am I angry? What's going on? And then start resolving the situation in more civilized manner.
Yeah, and I think, you know, around expressing the anger as well, there are different ways and avenues depending on the situation. If it is within a relationship context, any kind of relationship, you might be angry at a friend. I think, again, having taken the breath and reflected and understood what's going on internally, you can have a conversation with that friend or with your partner or whoever that person might be, and share your experience. But I think it's very important not going into that conversation with you're a horrible person, you made me feel angry, but rather specifying, when you did this and that, or you said this and this, I interpreted it as so and so, and that made me angry because my value is A, B, C, D. So when you come into this conversation from a calm, collected space, you're not attacking the person, you still recognize that you value your relationship and that they're still a decent human being, but something that they've done or said does not sit well with you. Having had that conversation, I think as long as they've taken it on board in a mature way, the relationship only gets stronger.
And when you were talking about this, I started to sing, to hear the song in my head, "Look What You Made Me Do," or something like that. That is completely out of the context, because nobody cannot make you do anything. You choose to do it, and then that's the victim role, like, you made me do it, and no, it's not like that.
And it never works, right? Because then the other person gets defensive, and it's like what you were saying, no one listens to the other side anymore. Everyone is just, it's a fight of a 2-3-year-old. The adoptive kids get involved, and the adult, the prefrontal cortex is on a break. It's gone.
Shut it down. Yeah.
Completely shut down. So you need to engage, to have a meaningful conversation, to set your boundary and say, this is not okay for you. You need to engage from the adult space.
Yeah, so then you can start solving the problem before you cannot.
Yeah. And I think, you know, another issue, like, I think this is helpful when you deal with the anger that arises in the present moment. But also there is some anger I think most of us carry that's been suppressed for many years. And I think a good way to release that, and it's very helpful to release that, is through different somatic practices. You can do yoga, you can do tai chi, you can do breath work. Breath work is very powerful for that. But also you can do it through therapy, and but the best I would say is combining the two. And in the presence of your therapist or coach, you can feel that anger in a more safe space, without that worry that it's going to get out of hand. So it's like you're teaching the system and expanding that window of tolerance, knowing that, oh, okay, I can express anger and it doesn't take over.
But then you also need to have a therapist who is okay with anger.
Oh, absolutely. But
Yeah.
I believe, you know, in therapy, to make any progress, you need to be with a person who is comfortable with the full range of emotions you bring to the table. If they are uncomfortable with it, then you're pretty much getting re-traumatized. And a lot of our problems are coming from our parents not being able in our childhood to hold certain emotions for us, like the anger we spoke about. They did not have the capacity to hold us in that angry space. And that's why we are where we are. So when you're going to a therapist, they should be able to sit with you when you're throwing a tantrum, when you're breaking down and you're in tears, and whatever you bring to the table, they're okay with it. And they're not necessarily trying to calm you down. They're just sitting back and being an empathetic witness by their calm, collected presence, letting you know that it's going to be okay.
Okay, yeah.
And that you are accepted as you are. I think a lot of us missed that growing up.
Yeah, and I think all the kids go through that rage stage when like 2, 3, 4 years that they just throw tantrums, and yeah. So it's good to know that also as a parent, that kids just have this stage and that's it, and it's okay.
Well, I think that's, and I'm not very well versed in childhood psychology, but if I remember correctly, this is approximately the age when they become separated from parents, in a sense that they start recognizing that they are a separate entity, because they're quite merged in the first couple of years, right? So then it's like, oh, there is me and there is mom and there is dad.
The first separation phase. Yeah.
That's probably quite a big step. So no wonder they get angry.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were talking about the scale of anger. We were talking about what is anger, that it's not somebody else is doing something, it's our perception, how we perceive things. What else? What we covered?
Well, just also recognizing that quite often behind anger there is something else, and if there is pain, there is hurt, there is shame potentially. Just exploring what's beneath it, and it can be scary, it can be painful. Again, you can see whether it's something you can do on your own, or you need someone to be with you to support you in this exploration. It can really help. But as with any emotion, I think it's all about developing a relationship with it, and accepting it, and say, okay, anger, there is anger that sometimes shows up, there is sadness that shows up, sometimes is that, and they're all okay.
Yeah, and maybe naming them. Oh, my Helga is here.
Yeah, some people name them. I don't have names for mine, but
I also don't have. I had, but now I don't have it anymore. I forgot about it. So when I was doing a lot with that, I had names for different emotional scales that I was experiencing, but now it's no, not anymore. I think we also evolve ourselves when we learn about these things. We get really deep into it, we explore it, we get familiar with our own feelings, and then we move on to see what else is there.
yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else you wanted to mention today?
Yeah, maybe with anger also from transactional analysis point of view, is good to differentiate, like if we are critical, if we want to take control, or if we have a lot of judgment, that we know that this comes from the adult part of ourselves. But if we are maybe passive aggressive, or we have these rebellious stages, that comes from our inner child. So just to distinguish what kind of anger am I feeling, because it's a lot of this passive aggressive anger, shutting the doors or doing something that it's not okay, but it feels good when you do it, because it's like, yes, I did something. At least. And then when you know if it's coming from your child's part of you ego state or the the parent ego state, then you can manage it better because you know which part of you have to address, or you have to come, because usually when we talk with these inner parts of us, intersectional analysis, like if we have a hurt child that is then rebellious or is doing this passive aggressive acts, then we can involve our inner nurturing parent that goes and talks with them, you know. But if it's a parent that is really judgmental, then we can also talk from nurturing part of, or just from adult part of yourself. So it's different approach depending on what we experience.
Okay, well, that's another interesting venue to explore.
Yeah, and it's also helpful, and also writing a diary, a journal, or just talking to a therapist or a really good friend and who listens to you and reflects on your words. Then you can maybe hear yourself through somebody else who is mirroring you. You can learn a little bit more about yourself and your anger, and or how you express it or how you don't express it, or you internalize it. Don't internalize anger. It's not good for your health. So that is my end. The closing words would be: express your anger in a healthy way.
Yeah. Great way to end this conversation then for today. Thank you so much, Petra. It was really engaging and interesting, and I didn't realize how the half an hour just flew by.
Yeah. So thank you, Irina, and see you next Monday.
Yeah. See you, and I hope you feel better soon.
It will be.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.